My 9-year-old daughter went to a sleepover at my sister's house, excited to spend time with her cousins. But instead of playing, they left her behind, scrubbing the floors. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lila, and I'm a single mom. My daughter Marin is sweet, shy, and trusting. She always looks forward to family time, especially with her cousins. My sister Tara seemed loving and fun when we were kids, but I had started noticing that she could be controlling and manipulative. I didn't realize how far it went until this sleepover. When Marin arrived, she ran straight to play with her cousins Jace and Finn. But Tara told them Marin was too little to join their games and handed her a mop instead. At first, Marin tried to ask if she could play, but Tara dismissed her. Her cousins laughed and left her to clean while they played video games and joked around. By the time I called to check on her, Marin sounded quiet and nervous. Tara insisted she was having fun, but I could hear the sadness in Marin's voice. My heart sank. I couldn't believe family could treat her this way. Marin tried not to cry and kept scrubbing, hoping to prove she was good enough. When I picked her up, the mess and her tired eyes told the truth. I hugged her tightly and promised we wouldn't let anyone treat her like that again. It hurt to see her betrayed, but I knew we would face this together, and Marin would come out stronger, learning that sometimes even family can disappoint, but love and justice can heal. Marin ran into Tara's house, her backpack bouncing and her eyes sparkling with excitement. She had imagined hours of laughter, board games, and secrets shared with her cousins Jace and Finn. Tara greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and immediately started listing rules. Marin, you're too little to join us right now, she said, handing her a dust cloth instead of welcoming her to play. Jace and Finn giggled behind her back, tossing teasing remarks about how clumsy she was and how slow she would be. Marin tried to laugh along, but the knot in her stomach grew tighter. The games she had dreamed about were happening just feet away, yet she was left scrubbing and wiping, feeling invisible. She glanced at the others, hoping one of them would ask her to join, but they were already caught up in their own fun. The mop felt heavier than she expected, and the excitement in her chest began to drain away. Tears threatened to spill, but she blinked them back, not wanting to show weakness. Every corner she wiped reminded her of what she had been denied. She had imagined giggles and whispered secrets, yet she was met with chores and quiet laughter at her expense. The warmth of anticipation dissolved into a quiet ache of disappointment, leaving her feeling small and unseen in the place she had once thought of as safe and fun. By the time the afternoon passed, Marin's bright enthusiasm had dimmed. She kept her sadness tucked away, hiding it behind a forced smile while she worked, learning too soon that sometimes family can hurt the most, even when it should have been a day of joy. I called Tara to check on Marin, expecting cheerful chatter. Instead, Tara's voice sounded calm and rehearsed. She's having such a great time, she said, but something in her tone didn't sit right. Marin's faint whisper in the background sounded hesitant, almost apologetic. I asked Marin if she was enjoying herself, and she started to speak, but Tara quickly interrupted. Marin, stop complaining. You're just being lazy, sweetie, she scolded sharply. Marin's small voice fell silent, swallowed by the room. I could hear the tension, the weight of words that weren't fair. Marin's hands gripped the edge of a table as if holding herself together. Her eyes were quiet and cautious, afraid to contradict Tara. I felt my heart tighten knowing she was being silenced, her excitement replaced by doubt. The confidence I had seen earlier seemed to shrink under Tara's control. It struck me how quickly a child could be manipulated, how an adult could twist innocence into obedience. Marin, who had trusted her aunt, now felt invisible, unheard, and unsure of herself. She learned a painful truth that day: even those who are supposed to care most could hurt deeply with their words. By the time I ended the call, I could hear Marin's small sigh, muffled and careful. Her silence spoke louder than any cheer. I realized that the first cracks of betrayal were forming, and she was already learning to hold her feelings inside, preparing to navigate a world where even family could be unkind. As I drove home later that day, a nagging unease settled in my chest. Something about Tara's voice during the call hadn't felt right, and memories of little incidents over the years started to surface, times when Tara had twisted situations or dismissed feelings in ways that seemed harmless at first, but now felt deliberate. I couldn't shake the image of Marin's quiet face, the careful way she held herself as if trying not to upset anyone. Guilt gnawed at me for letting her go alone, thinking it would be a fun visit. I wished I had trusted my instincts instead of assuming Tara would be kind. Marin had been so excited in the morning, practically bouncing with joy, and now she returned subdued, tucking her disappointment behind polite smiles. I realized she was hiding the sting of hurt just to spare me worry. My chest ached seeing how she tried to shield me, how much she wanted to appear strong even when her heart was heavy. I started thinking about what I could do next, about how to address Tara's behavior without making Marin feel more trapped or guilty. I knew a confrontation was coming, but it had to be careful and deliberate. The seeds of suspicion had taken root, and I couldn't ignore them. That night, I watched Marin quietly put her toys away, her small hands moving slowly, and I promised myself I would protect her. I understood more than ever how delicate her trust was and how quickly it could be shaken by someone who should have cared. My thoughts churned between guilt, anger, and the need to make things right, all while Marin silently endured, brave enough to hide her sadness from me. While Tara and the cousins were distracted, Marin found small ways to push back without getting caught. She poured a little too much soap into the bucket, making the floor slippery and foamy. She stacked the dishes in odd patterns that toppled easily, forcing herself to giggle quietly when no one noticed. Every tiny mess felt like a secret victory, a whisper of control in a day that had left her feeling powerless. She worked carefully, making sure Tara didn't see, her heart pounding with the thrill of defiance. Even the smallest act, hiding a mop in the corner or spilling a little water, gave her a sense of bravery she hadn't realized she had. It wasn't about rebellion, exactly, it was about reclaiming a piece of herself while everyone else assumed she was just obedient. Her eyes sparkled with quiet mischief as she watched the chaos unfold in her own little ways. She had learned to adapt quickly, thinking of clever ways to respond to unfairness without attracting anger. Each harmless mistake was a way to protect her spirit, a way to show herself that she wasn't completely powerless. Marin's mind buzzed with silent strategies, little victories stacked like hidden treasures, and she felt a growing confidence even though she kept her courage tucked inside. She knew her mom didn't yet see this side of her, but that was okay, she would let her tiny acts speak for themselves. In that quiet resistance, Marin discovered that even in the hardest moments, a child could find clever ways to hold on to dignity and strength, refusing to be completely subdued by those who underestimated her. Marin froze as she heard Jace and Finn's laughter ring louder than usual, echoing through the living room. "Can you even do anything right?" Jace sneered, pointing at the spilled water on the floor. Tara chuckled behind them, shaking her head as if this was all just harmless fun. Marin's cheeks burned, a mix of embarrassment and hurt flooding her chest. She bent lower to pick up the mess, forcing herself not to cry. Each snicker felt like a weight pressing down on her small shoulders, but she straightened her back and wiped her hands on her apron, determined not to show how deeply it cut. Inside, a storm of humiliation and frustration brewed, but she held it in, refusing to let them see how powerless she felt. From the doorway, I watched silently, my heart twisting. Something about the way Tara laughed along with the cousins made my stomach sink. This wasn't just a one-time oversight or innocent teasing, it felt deliberate, cruel, and controlling. A chill ran through me as I realized the depth of the toxicity I had ignored for so long. I clenched my fists, thinking about how I would protect Marin and ensure she wouldn't be treated this way again. The betrayal was sharp, cutting through the trust that should have existed between aunt and niece. But even in that low moment, I sensed a path forming, a way to show that such behavior wouldn't go unanswered. Marin continued to work quietly, her small body tense but unwavering. Though she felt humiliated, a flicker of determination shone through her eyes, a spark that promised she wouldn't let this moment define her. The weight of their cruelty pressed down, but it also planted the first seeds of retribution, waiting for the right time. When I arrived at Tara's house, the first thing that hit me was the chaos. Buckets were overturned, suds spread across the floor, and dishes were stacked haphazardly as if a storm had passed through. Maren stood near the doorway, her small frame hunched, eyes avoiding mine. I knelt beside her and asked softly what had happened. Her voice trembled as she told me everything, how Tara had ordered her to clean, how Jace and Finn had mocked her, and how every mistake was met with laughter. Piece by piece, the story unfolded, each detail worse than I could have imagined. Anger and disbelief surged through me, leaving me momentarily speechless. I had trusted my sister to care for Maren, to offer a safe and fun space, and instead, I saw betrayal written in every corner of that room. The sense of violation was sharp, slicing through any lingering illusions of family loyalty. Maren glanced at me, fear and guilt mingling in her eyes, but I pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. My fury didn't silence her pain, it fueled a determination to ensure she would never feel so small again. The house was a mess, but the real damage was invisible, the trust that Maren had placed in her aunt and cousins, shattered in an afternoon. I could feel the weight of it pressing on both of us, but I also felt a resolve hardening inside me. This betrayal wouldn't be ignored. I would make sure Maren knew her worth, and Tara would learn the consequences of underestimating her resilience. After leaving Tara's house, my mind raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. Anger burned beneath the surface, but I knew acting impulsively would only give her an advantage. I needed a plan, something precise, something that would reveal her behavior without stooping to her level. I thought about every detail Maren had shared, every cruel laugh, every dismissive word. The idea of showing the family what had really happened grew in my mind, not through confrontation alone, but through a careful, undeniable demonstration. It had to be clever, something that couldn't be brushed off or ignored. I pictured the upcoming family gathering, imagining subtle ways to let Tara's actions speak for themselves. I would orchestrate it so that the consequences were clear, but handled with quiet control. There was satisfaction in the thought of her realizing the impact of her cruelty in front of everyone she cared about. Even as I planned, I kept my emotions in check, reminding myself that this wasn't about revenge for the sake of anger, it was about justice, about showing Maren that she could stand up without ever raising her voice. Each step of the plan formed in my mind like a puzzle, pieces aligning perfectly. My anger was tempered by strategy, my hurt transformed into a careful determination. I would protect Maren and reclaim the trust that had been broken, proving that cruelty, no matter how subtle, would not go unnoticed. By the time I looked back at Maren, her small, cautious smile gave me resolve. She had been hurt, but together we could turn betrayal into a lesson. I would make sure Tara never underestimated us again, all while keeping my composure and ensuring Maren felt safe and empowered. I spent the next week quietly preparing for the weekend, making sure everything felt casual and welcoming. I invited Tara and the cousins, framing it as a simple family get-together, while in my mind, every detail was part of a plan. The table was set, the snacks arranged, and little situations were positioned to reveal who would truly shine under scrutiny. Tara arrived with her usual confident smile, unaware that the day had been carefully orchestrated. She carried herself as if nothing could rattle her, joking and chatting as though she owned the room. I kept my own demeanor light, greeting her warmly, hiding the tension coiled beneath the surface. I made sure Maren was nearby, calm but watchful, ready to step aside or engage as needed. Every seat, every task, even casual conversation was subtly arranged to bring out reactions that would speak louder than words. Small cues and setups would let Tara's controlling nature and condescension show naturally, without me having to point it out. As the afternoon progressed, I felt a mixture of anticipation and quiet satisfaction. The air was charged, but Tara didn't sense it, still smug in her assumed control. I watched the family interact, noting moments where patience was tested, confidence shaken, and true personality surfaced. Maren stayed close to me, a steady presence, absorbing the scene but unaware of all the careful planning that had gone into creating this moment. Each interaction felt like a thread being pulled, leading toward the moment when the truth would become undeniable. I kept my composure, letting the tension build naturally, knowing that the time for subtle revelation was drawing near, and that Tara's facade was about to crack. As everyone settled in, I casually began telling a story about Maren's supposed fun sleepover at Tara's house. I painted it as an ordinary afternoon, full of chores and little mishaps, letting the details slip naturally. Maren stayed quiet beside me, her eyes brightening as the story unfolded, knowing the truth was about to surface. Without raising my voice or pointing fingers, I revealed subtle evidence, small notes Maren had written, her hesitant explanations of what really happened, and little inconsistencies that Tara couldn't smooth over. The cousins' laughter faded as they listened, their expressions shifting from amusement to guilt. Jace and Finn exchanged awkward glances, the realization dawning that their teasing had been cruel, not playful. They looked at Maren with newfound respect, understanding how her quiet courage had been overlooked. The room's energy changed, a mixture of shock and reflection settling over the family. Tara's confident smile faltered as she realized everyone could see the truth. Her attempts to laugh it off or excuse her behavior stumbled, leaving her embarrassed in front of the people she cared about. I kept my tone gentle and composed, letting the facts speak for themselves, knowing that direct confrontation would only escalate tension. Watching the moment unfold, I felt a deep satisfaction. Justice had been served not through anger or humiliation, but by exposing the reality calmly and cleverly. Maren's quiet resilience had shone through, and the family now recognized the unfairness she had endured. I saw the relief in her eyes, and for the first time that week, she could feel proud, knowing that truth had a voice and that kindness and patience could triumph over cruelty. After the reveal, Maren's shoulders finally relaxed, and a small, genuine smile spread across her face. She leaned into me, feeling the warmth of my support and realizing that she wasn't alone. The weight she had carried all week began to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Jace and Finn approached her hesitantly, their earlier confidence replaced by regret. "We're sorry, Maren," they said softly, avoiding eye contact at first, then meeting hers with sincerity. They admitted that their teasing had been wrong and that they hadn't considered how hurtful their words and laughter had been. Maren nodded, accepting their apologies, though she remained cautious. It was a start, a first step toward rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. Her courage, combined with the calm guidance I provided, created a space where mistakes could be acknowledged and lessons learned without bitterness. The family atmosphere shifted subtly, a mix of relief and reflection settling over the room. Maren's confidence grew as she realized that standing up, even indirectly, could change how others treated her. She no longer felt powerless, and I could see the beginnings of resilience blossoming in her eyes. That day marked the start of healing. The betrayal had been addressed, the wrongs recognized, and the first threads of trust were being mended. Maren's laughter returned in small bursts, hesitant at first, but genuine, signaling that emotional wounds could mend with care and support. Together, we had turned a painful experience into a lesson, and for the first time in days, Maren felt safe, seen, and valued again. A few weeks later, I suggested a family outing to a local charity event, making it sound like a fun way to spend the day together. Tara, eager to appear helpful and in control, agreed without hesitation. What she didn't know was that the tasks ahead were exhausting, meticulous, and relentless. Once we arrived, volunteers were busy organizing, scrubbing, and sorting items that seemed endless. I positioned Tara at the center of the busiest station, surrounded by heaps of supplies and demanding chores, while Maren quietly observed from a corner, a small smile playing on her lips. Tara's confident demeanor quickly started to fade as she realized the scale of work before her. The endless scrubbing and organizing mirrored the tedious labor she had forced on Maren, and each repetitive task seemed to stretch her patience thinner than she expected. Sweat glistened on her forehead, and her earlier bravado faltered under the weight of the relentless duties. Maren watched, quietly satisfied, as Tara experienced the monotony and strain firsthand. There was no need for confrontation or harsh words, the lesson was in the experience itself. Tara's discomfort and exhaustion were subtle yet unmistakable, a mirror of the unfairness she had imposed on a child. By the end of the day, Tara's expression had changed, less smug, more reflective. Maren's quiet triumph was complete, and I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served without cruelty, and Maren learned that standing strong and clever thinking could turn power around. We had delivered a lesson that words alone could not achieve, letting Tara feel the weight of her actions while keeping our own hands clean. Over the next few gatherings, I noticed a subtle shift in the family dynamics. Relatives who had always overlooked Tara's sharp edges began to see the difference in how I handled situations, calm, patient, and fair, yet firm. Her attempts to dominate or manipulate no longer went unnoticed, and whispers of recognition spread quietly among the adults. Jace and Finn started staying near Marin, watching her with newfound respect. They asked for her opinions on small decisions, included her in games, and even sought her help on little tasks. Marin, once quiet and hesitant, responded confidently, aware that her voice now mattered. The contrast between her composed strength and Tara's restless need for control became apparent to everyone. Family members exchanged glances that said more than words could, realizing that cruelty and selfishness didn't earn admiration, but empathy, clever thinking, and resilience did. Marin's transformation was inspiring to watch. She moved with quiet assurance, knowing she had weathered something unfair and come out stronger. The cousins' apologies, her clever handling of small challenges, and my steady guidance had reshaped how she was seen. The entire family seemed to absorb the lesson without a single loud confrontation. Tara's manipulations were no longer hidden, and her influence had diminished. Through careful planning, subtle actions, and patience, the situation had shifted, proving that measured justice and thoughtful strategy could correct wrongdoing. By the end of it, the household atmosphere felt lighter, warmer, and more respectful. Marin had gained allies and confidence, and the betrayal that had once hurt so deeply now served as a reminder that clever, composed responses could teach lessons far more lasting than anger alone. Over time, Marin carried herself differently. Her steps were steadier, her voice clearer, and her laughter returned with ease. She no longer hesitated to speak up or participate, showing a confidence that had been hidden under weeks of doubt and disappointment. I watched her grow with pride, knowing she had learned to trust herself and her instincts. Tara's once towering presence had diminished. She moved through family gatherings more cautiously, aware that her attempts to dominate or belittle no longer worked. Her ego, once inflated by control and manipulation, was quietly tempered by the events that had unfolded, leaving her to reflect on her own behavior. For me, the satisfaction was calm but deep. The betrayal that had stung so sharply had been addressed thoughtfully, with strategy and patience rather than anger. Seeing Marin reclaim her strength and knowing I had guided her through it gave me a sense of vindication and relief. Marin's courage, combined with careful planning, had transformed a painful experience into a lesson in dignity and resilience. The bond between us felt stronger than ever, built not just on love, but on shared triumph and understanding. By the end, the house was filled with a gentle warmth. Marin's bright energy reminded everyone that setbacks could be overcome, that unfairness could be met with intelligence and composure, and that family ties could survive even betrayal when handled with care. We had turned a story of hurt into one of hope, empowerment, and growth, proving that even the deepest wounds could lead to strength and a lasting sense of justice.